The first letter arrived on a Wednesday morning, crisp white paper embossed with the Willow Creek Estate's golden logo. The words were dressed up in legal jargon, but the message was simple enough: remove all unsightly equipment from areas visible to community roadways or face escalating actions. Martha chuckled as she read it over breakfast. Some folks have too much time on their hands, she said, shaking her head. But I knew better. This wasn't going to be a one-off nuisance. This was Cynthia Davenport's opening salvo. The following week, a second letter came, this one by certified mail. It referenced unauthorized industrial machinery and visual disruptions to the aesthetic integrity of Willow Creek. I responded with copies of my property lines, agricultural zoning documentation, and the Department of Defense agreement outlining the purpose and status of the tractor. I even included a personal note: while I respect your desire for a well-maintained community, this property remains under agricultural designation protected by state and county law. I signed it with a polite but firm hand. I should have known courtesy wouldn't disarm someone like Cynthia. Instead, her attacks escalated. Soon after, I began receiving daily noise complaints. According to her, my 7 a.m. tractor work violated residential quiet hours. Never mind that I wasn't in her jurisdiction. She filed formal grievances with the county. Then came the real sting. One afternoon, my neighbor Helen Graves appeared on my porch, clutching a yellow envelope. Frank, I didn't know who else to turn to. They fined us $500 for planting native wildflowers by our fence. Said they weren't on the approved vegetation list. Her voice trembled. Helen and her husband were retired school teachers, living on a fixed income. Cynthia wasn't just targeting me, she was shaking down good, honest people to enforce her warped vision of order. I tried to settle things face to face. I invited Cynthia back to my property, hoping reason might reach her. She showed up in that same tailored navy suit, clipboard in hand. I walked her through the farm again, highlighting the educational value, the community outreach, the legality. She watched children from the nearby elementary school laugh and learn as they toured the barn and climbed aboard the John Deere. Dr. Jonathan Harris, a retired history professor who had just moved into Willow Creek, stood beside me. Frank, this place is a treasure. My grandkids will remember this day for the rest of their lives. Cynthia's eyes narrowed. This children's program is quaint, she conceded, but her tone was icy. That doesn't change the fact that this eyesore is visible from the community entrance. That green monstrosity has to go. She didn't even glance at the kids, now gathered around me as I explained simple machines and hydraulic systems. Her world was measured in square footage and resale value. Then came the third letter, this one from a law firm in Baltimore, Winston, and Leeds. At first, I thought it might be serious until I discovered the firm was owned by her brother-in-law. I returned fire with another packet of documentation, but Cynthia pivoted. Her Range Rover became a daily fixture on the dirt road leading to my property, arriving every morning at 8:15 sharp. She sat there for hours, taking photos, jotting notes in a leather-bound planner. I installed security cameras after Martha found our mailbox tampered with one morning. And that's when I caught her. One afternoon, the camera captured Cynthia, dressed in business attire and designer heels, slipping under my fence to get close-up photos of the tractor. The footage was clear and damning. I handed it over to Sheriff Cooper. A few days later, he told me with a grin, I had to explain to her the difference between a utility easement and private property. She wasn't pleased. I thought that might end it. I thought maybe now, finally, she'd back off. But I underestimated just how deep her obsession ran. What I didn't know was that behind the scenes, she was orchestrating something far dirtier, something that would turn this petty feud into a full-blown federal disaster. The next blow came without warning. Late one evening, as I reviewed security footage on my laptop, something strange caught my eye. At first, I thought it was just wildlife, a raccoon or maybe a stray dog crossing the property line. But as I zoomed in, my stomach twisted. There, under the soft glow of the moonlight, a man in dark clothing and work gloves climbed out of the passenger seat of a black pickup truck. He hauled broken appliances, rusted metal scraps, an old washing machine door, and scattered buckets, and deliberately dumped them along the edge of my property near the access road. He carefully arranged the mess, taking pictures with his phone before slipping back into the truck and driving off into the night. I didn't have to wonder long who sent him. Cynthia had crossed yet another line. Not content with simply documenting so-called violations, she was creating them. Manufacturing evidence. The next morning, I found an envelope in the mailbox stamped with another official-looking HOA notice. Failure to address accumulating derelict materials within 48 hours will result in fines and further action. My blood boiled. This wasn't just about aesthetics anymore. She was willing to fabricate violations to push me off my own land. I took the footage straight to Sheriff Cooper. He watched the video twice before whistling low. "Frank, this is criminal. I'll have a word with her." But even law enforcement couldn't slow her down. Cynthia's hunger for control had metastasized into something far more dangerous. 2 days later, word began circulating around the Veterans Coffee Group. Cynthia had been seen dining with a group of real estate developers at the country club. My friend Bob Anderson, whose cousin worked at the club, confirmed what I feared most: they weren't discussing community beautification projects. They were discussing expansion. Eminent domain. Plans to pressure the county to seize agricultural parcels, including mine, and convert them into retail spaces and upscale amenities for Willow Creek. She wasn't just after my tractor or my fence line. She wanted my land. My legacy. My family's history. And she was willing to lie, cheat, and bully to get it. I went to bed that night with a tight knot in my chest. This was no longer just about petty letters or nuisance complaints. It was about fighting for something far bigger than myself. I had no idea that the battle lines were only beginning to be drawn. It was supposed to be a joyful week. Martha and I packed up the truck, leaving the farm in good order to spend 4 days with our daughter in Riverdale, helping her settle in with our brand new grandson. I made sure the fields were tended, the cattle secure, and, as always, parked my John Deere tractor on the dirt access road that ran alongside the farm, well within my property line, but visible from the road. It had been there dozens of times before, never an issue. But this time, I underestimated just how far Cynthia would go in my absence. We returned home late Thursday afternoon, exhausted but happy, arms full of baby photos and handmade gifts. As soon as I turned onto the familiar dirt road leading to our house, a cold knot formed in my stomach. The spot where my tractor had been parked was empty. The soil was freshly disturbed, tire tracks cutting deep into the gravel. My heart dropped. "Martha, someone stole the tractor." Before she could respond, I was already reaching for my phone, calling Sheriff Cooper. As I explained the situation to dispatch, Martha called out from the porch, "Frank, there's an envelope taped to the door." I tore it open. A pristine piece of paper, stamped with the golden Willow Creek logo, printed in smug, official language, "Notice of Nuisance Abatement Action. Pursuant to Community Protection Ordinance 15C, equipment in violation of aesthetic standards has been removed. Contact Hillside Impound for retrieval information." And at the bottom, signed in grand, sweeping ink, Cynthia Davenport, HOA President. My hands trembled as I dialed the impound lot. The attendant confirmed in an offhand tone that they'd towed a green John Deere tractor that morning. "Paperwork's all in order," he said. Signed by the property manager. Lady in a blue suit. She was very clear about it being unauthorized equipment left near community access. "That'll be $1,200 for towing, plus $150 per day storage. Already 1 day's charge on the books." Before I could form words, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Cynthia Davenport. I answered, bracing myself. Her voice oozed satisfaction. Mr. Harrison, I thought it best to inform you personally. The HOA has exercised its right to remove nuisance equipment. The entrance looks much better already. If you'd like that eyesore back, you can pay the impound fees and sign a written agreement never to park farm equipment near our community entrance again. And just so you're aware, our attorney will be contacting you about reimbursement for the removal of your fence post, which, according to our documentation, was improperly placed near a community access point. I clenched my jaw. Cynthia, that tractor isn't just my property, but she cut me off. It's an eyesore. And now it's gone. Have a pleasant afternoon. The line went dead. What Cynthia didn't realize, what she never even considered, was that the John Deere tractor wasn't just mine. It was on loan from the United States government, marked clearly with federal property tags. Unauthorized removal or tampering wasn't just petty theft, it was a federal crime. My heart pounded as I called Major James Williams, the Department of Defense official who oversaw the Veteran Equipment Preservation Program. I expected to leave a voicemail. He answered on the second ring. Frank, everything all right with the tractor? I swallowed hard and laid out the entire situation, reading off the impound lot information and forwarding the security footage I'd captured of Cynthia trespassing on my property. There was a pause on the other end, so heavy it felt like gravity itself had shifted. Stay put, he said finally. Document everything. Take photographs of where the tractor was parked. Do not engage with the HOA any further. I'm making calls right now. By the next morning at 8 a.m., my quiet farm road resembled a federal investigation scene. A black government SUV pulled into my driveway, followed by 2 military police vehicles and a sedan from the Department of Transportation. Major Williams stepped out first, followed by Captain Sarah Jensen from the Judge Advocate General's Corps and Mr. Terrence Blackwell from the DOT. They didn't waste a second. They spent over an hour interviewing me, inspecting boundary markers, and reviewing every piece of correspondence Cynthia had ever sent. The look on their faces confirmed what I already knew. This was no longer just an HOA overstepping its bounds. This was a federal offense in motion, and Cynthia had just lit the fuse. The military officials worked with methodical precision, snapping photos of the tire tracks, measuring property lines down to the inch, and collecting copies of every smug letter Cynthia had ever sent. Captain Sarah Jensen's face remained professional, but her clipped tone and the sharp glances she exchanged with Major Williams made it clear she was less than impressed with the situation. This isn't just about one tractor, Mr. Harrison, she finally said, gathering the last of the documents into her folder. Unauthorized removal of marked government equipment triggers multiple jurisdictions and serious federal statutes. Mr. Blackwell from the Department of Transportation nodded solemnly. And the use of a commercial towing company on public roads without proper authorization? That's a Department of Transportation violation on top of everything else. Just as they finished their inspection, one of the military police officers approached with an update. The tow truck carrying my John Deere tractor had been intercepted less than 3 miles from the impound lot and was being rerouted straight back to my property. I was still absorbing that news when Major Williams' phone buzzed. He answered, listened for a moment, then gave a clipped nod. She's been contacted, he said simply. She'll be arriving shortly. Not 10 minutes later, the roar of tires on gravel made everyone turn. Cynthia's white Range Rover screeched to a stop at the edge of my driveway. She stepped out briskly, the picture of corporate arrogance in a navy pantsuit and expensive sunglasses. Her designer heels sank into the soft dirt as she stormed toward us, clutching her leather portfolio like a shield. Her eyes darted between the military vehicles and my approaching tractor, now secured on a flatbed tow truck and slowly rolling onto my property. Her expression flickered between confusion and anger, then settled on indignation. What is the meaning of this? She demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "I authorized that equipment to be removed. It's a community nuisance, and you're all interfering with HOA business." I took one step forward, adjusting my cowboy hat and pointing toward the flatbed. "That tractor you towed isn't just mine, ma'am. It belongs to the United States government." Captain Jensen stepped in beside me, her voice calm but ironclad. "Miss Davenport, I'm Captain Sarah Jensen of the Judge Advocate General's Corps, United States Army. The removal of this vehicle was unauthorized and illegal. You are now under investigation for multiple federal offenses, including false representation of authority, interference with a federal program, and unauthorized seizure of government property." Cynthia's face paled, but she tried to recover. "This is absurd," she sputtered. "HOA covenants allow us to remove abandoned or unsightly equipment. The tractor was on community-adjacent property and visible from the main road. It was a blight on property values." Mr. Blackwell stepped forward silently and handed her a high-resolution photograph of the tractor's government property tag, clearly marked with the Federal Eagle and warning placard. Cynthia's hand trembled as she took it. "I wasn't aware of any special status," she whispered, but her voice faltered. "I was simply protecting the community. My actions were within my authority." Captain Jensen's gaze hardened. "You instructed a commercial towing company to remove federal property from private land, falsified documentation to claim it was abandoned, and used HOA funds without proper authorization. This is not a misunderstanding, ma'am. This is federal interference." The tow truck driver, shifting nervously from foot to foot, finally spoke. "She told me it was community property and signed off everything. Said I had full permission. I wouldn't have touched it otherwise." Major Williams played a clip from my security footage, showing Cynthia waving the driver over, instructing him exactly how to load the tractor and what to tell the impound lot. The evidence was irrefutable. Cynthia's composure shattered. I didn't mean for it to escalate. I was only doing what's best for Willow Creek," she stammered. "What's best for the community," Mr. Blackwell replied coldly, "is knowing the difference between authority and abuse of power." Captain Jensen handed her a thick envelope. "This is a cease and desist order. Effective immediately, you are to discontinue any actions involving Mr. Harrison's property or any federally issued equipment. Further violations will result in criminal prosecution." Cynthia's eyes burned with fury, but she had no more words. She spun on her heel and stumbled back to her car. As her tires spun up dust and gravel in retreat, Captain Jensen turned to me with a small nod. "Sometimes," she said quietly, "the loudest people fall the hardest." The dust from Cynthia's retreat had barely settled when the phone calls and text messages began pouring in. Word had spread faster than wildfire. By evening, neighbors I hadn't spoken more than a few words to were stopping by with pies, bottles of wine, and firm handshakes. Helen Graves and her husband showed up first, tears in her eyes and a warm apple pie in her hands. "We've all been waiting for someone to stand up to her, Frank," she said softly. "You didn't just do it for yourself, you did it for all of us." The Anderson family followed with their teenage son in tow, grinning as they handed me a bottle of bourbon and whispered, "My basketball hoop is still standing, and now I think it might stay that way." By the time night fell, my front porch felt more like a community gathering hall than a quiet farmhouse stoop. But the real reckoning came 2 days later, when a formal notice was delivered to every mailbox in Willow Creek Estates, an emergency HOA meeting at the community clubhouse. The room was packed wall to wall, over 90% attendance, with even 2 local reporters lurking in the back, their notebooks ready. I sat quietly in a corner as Judge Robert Chandler, now acting as interim board president, opened the floor. What followed was 3 hours of stories that made even my blood boil. Elderly couples threatened with liens over minor landscaping choices. Young families fined for having children's toys visible in their yards. Neighbors bullied, silenced, and drained of thousands of dollars under the guise of community aesthetics. The final blow came when the treasurer, Walter Phillips, projected financial records on the wall, revealing unauthorized spending Cynthia had hidden under vague entries like community beautification. Tens of thousands of HOA funds funneled into private towing services, unauthorized surveillance cameras, and secret meetings with developers. Cynthia's resignation letter had arrived by courier an hour before the meeting began. It cited personal health concerns and included notice of her immediate departure from the community. The room erupted in applause when Judge Chandler read it aloud. The new board voted to suspend all pending violation notices, initiate a full forensic audit, and establish clear boundaries with neighboring properties. And in the weeks that followed, the community transformed. The quarterly educational events became monthly. Retired teachers, gardeners, and historians volunteered their time. Children planted vegetable gardens. Families gathered for harvest festivals. What began as a private battle became a collective triumph. 6 months later, Willow Creek Estates received a regional award for innovative community planning, honoring the integration of local agricultural heritage. A photo of my restored John Deere tractor, with schoolchildren climbing over it and laughing, now hangs in their clubhouse. And every time I see it, I can't help but wonder how quickly one person's arrogance nearly destroyed what could have been, and now has become, something truly special. Have you ever felt powerless against HOA or Karen-style overreach? Share your experiences below. Let's see who had it worse.